Welcome back, everyone, for part 2 of this special top 50 list. As mentioned before, this is a ranking of, at least in my personal opinion, favorite fantasy films of all time. Now, this can include some crossovers, but I am excluding Star Wars, even though it's considered a fantasy sci fi. I still think of it more as a sci fi than actual fantasy. I mean, it's a flaw on my part, but with that said, here is first the recap for part one. Honorable mentions, of course, as I said, The Little Mermaid, as well as Into the Woods, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, The Lightning Thief, I'm 50-50 on, Ponyo, Princess and the Frog, Tall Tale, which is a underrated film, Warriors of Virtue, which is kind of like kangaroo version of Ninja Turtles, per se. Also, The Black Cauldron, I think, is criminally underrated. Dishonorable mentions the two Ewok movies because even though they take place in the same universe as Star Wars, they are much more fantasy and there's not really much sci fi at all in the films. Um, Also, I have to say, also dishonorable mentions, of course. Aragon was a disappointment for me personally. Also, Neverending Story 3. I was never a fan of the third film. But with that said, first up, quick rundown. At number 50 was The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which was the 20th Century Fox, based on the C.S. Lewis book. Also, 49, The Neverending Story 2, the next chapter, I have a bit of a fondness for since it was the first film in the series I personally saw. Then we have The Cat Returns. Then we have Tales from Earthsea, Miyazaki films. Also, we have Anastasia, which I love, of course, from the great Don Bluth. Also, Indian in the Cupboard, which I think is one of the most criminally underrated films of all time. Based on book, same name. I do highly recommend if you haven't ever seen Indian in the Cupboard, do yourself a favor and check it out. It was released originally in 1995. Great film. Also at 44, based loosely on the story of Arabian Nights, of course. At 44 is Aladdin, animated Aladdin. Then we have, based on the first of his Dark Materia series of books from Phil Pullman, we have The Golden Compass. I personally like. I really enjoyed specifically, though I thought Nicole Kidman was one of my personal favorite characters in the film. I thought she portrayed the character very well. Also, The Hobbit, Battle of the Five Armies. At 41, Maleficent. At 40, Warcraft. Big fan of the film. 39, the original Frozen, admittedly, weakness for the film. Also at 38 is the remake of Clash of the Titans. Also at 37, a criminally underrated, amazing film. I highly recommend checking out Mirror Mask. At 36, a superb, excellent story, great animation, and I expect nothing less, and great overall enjoyment. As a big fan of stop motion animation, at 36, Kubo and the Two Strings. At 35, The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. At 34, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. At 33, the original classic Neverending Story. At 32, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. At 31, the I personally enjoy from Sam Raimi. At 31 is Oz the Great and Powerful. I get why some people don't like it, but teach their own. At 30 is the sequel to the remake of Clash of Titans, and as Wrath of the Titans comes in at 30. I thought it was a great film. It had a great ending fight scene involving, of course, the king of the Titans, Kronos, against his two sons, Hades and Zeus. Also, 29, the Disney animated film Hercules. At 28, Harry Potter and the Half Blood Prince. At 27, a all-time classic, which I really enjoyed Sean Connery in, doing the voice of the dragon Draco. Um, Coming in at 27 is the classic Dragonheart. And at 26 was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, aka Sorcerer's Stone. Next, coming in at 25, released in 2005, the next of Harry Potter films. And I like this film more than some people. I mean, it is arguably probably the farthest away from the source material of the books by far, and that have more to do with the director involved. Which someday I may get into if I eventually get around to doing a retrospective of the Wizarding World films or Harry Potter films. Um, and that is Potter and the Gauntlet of Fire comes in 25. At 24, another great classic from Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki. I really enjoyed the main character, well, secondary to main character, voiced by the great Christian Bale. At 24, released in 2004, is the film Howl's Moving Castle. Coming at 23 was one of the first three Miyazaki films I ever saw. Coming at 23, it released originally in 1997. English dub work was done by at the time Studio Miramax, which was owned by Disney. And that is at 23 is the great classic in my opinion, Princess Mononoke. Coming in at 22, released in 2004, arguably I would say one of the most beloved of the Harry Potter films. And definitely from an artistic standpoint, I see why so many people love it. It is in the upper half for me personally. I feel it's maybe a bit overrated, but from certain artistic standpoints, like the way the scenes and the backgrounds and everything are allowed a little bit better to tell story, from a filmmaking perspective, this is far superior to most of the Harry Potter films. I still really like it. It's just gone back and forth for me and how much I like it, but I still like it. At 22 is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Coming in at 21 is a all-time classic from the Jim Henson Company. Released originally in 1982, is an all-time classic film from Jim Henson with great puppetry, great designs. I love the film. It will always be a cult classic. There's a reason it has a very hardcore fan base. And it would get a sort of spin-off series from Netflix, strangely enough. Coming in at 21 is the classic The Dark Crystal. Next, coming in at number 20. I'm not sure what some people's opinions are on this film, but released in 2005 from Walt Disney, deciding to try to take advantage of the popularity of the Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth universe, they decided to go to Tolkien's best friend, and that was, of course, The Chronicles of Narnia. At 20 is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, arguably the best well-known book from The Chronicles of Narnia by far. Arguably, it's kind of neck and neck for being my personal favorite book with The Magician's Nephew. But with that said, coming in next at number 19, I'm sure there's definitely going to be some disagreement, that's fine. Released in 2018, this is the second of the Fantastic Beasts films. And that is, of course, led by the great, and I felt stole every scene he was in. Coming in 19, of course, starting Johnny Depp, also Justice for Johnny, after being removed from the sequel, which I will not be going to theaters, and giving my money to the new Fantastic Beasts film, because of them replacing the great Johnny Depp as Grindelwald. But coming in at 19 is Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald. Next, at 18, is a surprisingly overlooked fantasy film from the 2000s. It is great. It has multiple different veteran actors and some less well known at the time. Has pretty good quality, I think, also CG and everything from a story perspective, and definitely there's a likability, definitely with a lot of the characters in the film. And I personally love it. I will, on occasion, annually at least watch the film once a year. It's a real enjoyment. I wish more people would have given this film a chance. At number 18 is Stardust. Next, coming in at number 17, arguably is probably one of the films on this list that has the biggest nostalgia factor for me personally. This film was directed, of course, by the great Spielberg, and would star the late, great, rest in peace, Robin Williams. Coming at number 17 for me personally is the film Hook. Great film. I will always love this. This was arguably, and has always been one of my personal favorite of Spielberg films. And I'm glad there's a lot of people out there like myself that really appreciate it. It's sad. Surprisingly, it's not as well liked by critics, but that's because the film was made more for family audiences and stuff. But to be fair, when the film came out, I was the right age because I believe I was like 7 when Hook came to theaters. So I was in the correct demographic group to see it. And I'll never forget watching it for the first time on the big screen. So yeah, nostalgia factor very much heavily applied for Hook. Coming in at 16 is personally my favorite of the theatrically released Chronicles of Narnia films, and I think this is a more overlooked one. Coming in at number 16, released in 2008, is the great, based on the fourth book in the Chronicles of Narnia series, and that is, of course, Prince Caspian at 16th. Coming in at 15th, we go back to the Harry Potter world. Released in 2003, wrong franchises, but released in 2003, arguably a beloved favorite for me and many other, mixing fantasy with swashbuckling action. Coming in at number 15 is Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Next at 14 is the all-time classic released in 1939, and for a long time, for quite a few years, was my personal favorite film. It has gone down over time, but I still love it nevertheless. And that is the classic musical starring, of course, Judy Garland. Of course, that is the classic The Wizard of Oz. Coming in at 13 is arguably my personal favorite of the Hobbit films. Released in 2012, and I still love this to this day, especially the Misty Mountains theme. At number 13 is The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Coming in at 12, we go back to the Wizarding World. At 12 is arguably the big final film of the 8 Harry Potter films, and that is coming at 13, released in 2011. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I'm sure some people have it as their favorite and stuff, but for me, I do like it a lot. It's pretty much like my third favorite, more or less, Harry Potter film. Coming in at number 11, one of the most overlooked films. Its crazy part is this is a great fantasy film, and this was like the only TV channel original movie that is on this list, but left an impact for me, and I love it for some of the specific actors in the film. Surprisingly done by Sci-Fi Channel of all channels, though it's a complete fantasy film. At number 11 is the great overlooked film released in 1998, Merlin. Based on Merlin, and also about basically the birth and rise of course, King Arthur. Great film, I highly recommend checking it out. One of the big stars being formerly from the original classic Jurassic Park, as well as in Jurassic Park 3. Coming in at number 10, released in 1991, this was a film I will never forget. It is arguably, I think, in the top 5 best animated musicals of all time, and arguably one of the greatest one of the greatest fantasy films of all time, with great songs like Be Our Guest and many others. Coming in at number 10 is the classic animated Beauty and the Beast. Coming in at number 9, we go back again to another swashbuckling adventure. Tied at number 9 is between two films from the same series. The second and third installments released in 2006 and 2007, and that is Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and At World's End. And I always try to watch them back to back because it's the best way to watch the two films. But arguably, I absolutely love the Pirates films, but the original Pirates trilogy is, in my opinion, one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. Personal opinion only. Coming in at number 8, once again, we return to the Wizarding World. Released in 2002, it remains pretty much my second favorite of the Harry Potter films. And the film did so many superb things. It really is, I think, one of the greatest, probably my second favorite film of all time, directed by Christopher Columbus. First would be, of course, Home Alone. But that being the great Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Arguably, maybe my favorite incarnation of actually Voldemort was the younger version of him, or aka learning his real name, Tom Riddle. Coming in at number 7, film that has very much nostalgia factor, directed by George Lucas and involving the Jim Henson Company. And this would be the film that would lead to my big love for great music from the late great David Bowie. Thank you, sir. And thank you as being the great Goblin King. Coming in at number 7 is Labyrinth. Coming in at number 6, though technically it's a main series, I'm putting the whole mini-series in at number 6 because I can. They were individually released in 1988, 1989, and 1990 from the BBC. This will be a mini-series of 2 parts for, and of course that is the Chronicles of Narnia BBC mini-series. 2 parts for Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe. Then the next would be 1 part Prince Caspian, part 2 Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and then 90 would be the 2-part special involving, of course, the 6th book in the series, that being the Silver Chair, and having individuals like a certain Marshwiggle character, Puddleglum, which would be filled and played by the role of a certain great 4th Doctor from Doctor Who. So if you're a Whovian, you probably get who I'm talking about. Also, of course, it would have great work as one of the talking owls in the film by the great Warwick Davis. And Harry Potter fans know pretty dang well who Warwick Davis is, I'm pretty sure on that. And definitely should, if you don't, check out the film Willow. Speaking of, coming in at number 5 is a tie. First is the classic I was talking about, involving, of course, none other than the great Warwick Davis, that being Willow, tied at number 5. Nostalgia factor heavily implied. There has elements of sci-fi, but it's definitely more fantasy. Released in 2009, it was an artistic masterpiece. I get why some people don't like, but for me, tied at number 5 is James Cameron's Avatar. I am a huge advocate and a huge defender of Avatar, and I personally am really looking forward to eventually when Avatar 2 comes out. I'm really curious to see what James Cameron does with it. Crossing my fingers, and I'm glad that Avatar is the king at the box office. Coming in at number 4 is arguably my favorite of the Harry Potter films. Released in 2007, arguably based on probably about the weakest or second weakest of the Harry Potter books, but I think the film would far surpass the book. And that is, in 4th place is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, which is a superb, excellently well done film. And I love the introduction in the film to Looney Lovegood, one of my personal favorite characters in the Harry Potter franchise as a whole. As well as some of the fight scenes is superb in that big final wizarding battle we get to see between Lord Voldemort and, of course, Dumbledore. Amazing. Also, I love the fact they chose a Bottom Carter to play the role of a certain Bellatrix. Very smart casting, of course, from the former, now ex-wife of course, the great Tim Burton. Coming in at number 3, a film that is my personal favorite film of all time, pretty much done by Disney. Big nostalgia factor implied, and is the somewhat really bizarre, weird sort of sequel to The Wizard of Oz, and that is Return to Oz. Comes in third place. Amazing film, love it, love the clay, stop motion animation, everything. Mombi, the Gnome King, such a great film overall. And the Wheelers really freaked me out as a kid, I'll never forget. Coming in at number 2 is arguably my favorite anime film of all time, released in 2001 from Studio Ghibli, as well as Hayao Miyazaki. Coming in at number 2 is Spirited Away. Coming at number 1 is my favorite movie of all time. Technically, it's a trilogy, but I count it as one. Of course, my favorite fantasy film of all time is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, released in, of course, back-to-back 2001, 2002, and 2003. Hard to believe it's been 19 years since Return of the King came out. And this fall will be the 20th anniversary of The Two Towers. Mind-blowing to think it's been that many years. But with that said, that is my personal top 50 favorite fantasy films of all time. And if you're curious about the music of choice today in the background, it is from the great, fun, beautiful indie game called Air Memory of Old. And that's Air spelt with A-E-R. So with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Stay safe. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the people of Ukraine, as well as the everyday people of Russia. Stay safe out there, everyone, in these crazy and bizarre times. See you soon.